Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Simone here. So today I'm going to be doing a library haul for you because one, I haven't done one in ages, and two, because I really want to film a bookshelf tour very soon. And I was going to start at the bottom of my bookshelves, which is down here, and then work my way up. But then I realised that the bottom shelf of my bookshelves has half library books on it. So I thought what I would do is start with the library haul, and then I would do a bookshelf tour of the rest of that shelf and then work my way up from there. So I hope that you enjoy this video. I love going to the library. I probably read like half library books, I reckon. Maybe even more than that, to be honest with you. And let me get started. So the first book I have got out of the library at the moment is It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han, which is the second book in the summer series. The first one I read, I think it was the end of last year, and it was The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I did have some problems with. I think I mentioned this in other videos where I was talking about the fact that the idea of puberty being when you turn pretty was a little bit problematic for me. But I'm hoping the second one, because it's after she would have hit puberty, may be slightly different. However, the tagline on this says, "One girl, two brothers, which one will she choose?" And I'm pretty sure that was the synopsis for the first book, so clearly not much has changed. So anyway, I'll see how I feel about this. I'm not really holding my breath too much, but hopefully I'll enjoy it. Then I have a book that I am currently reading, and that is a massive book. It's huge. I accidentally got large print of this, and for a book that's normally 600 pages, this one's 850, so, and it's also huge. It's like as big as my head. But this is The Girl Who Played with Fire by Stieg Larsson, and this is the second book in the Millennium trilogy, which the first book being The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which I think I read maybe a couple of years ago and I loved it, and I've watched the two films, the Swedish version and the English version, and really liked them too. So like I say, I'm currently reading this. I've got about 100 pages to go, but I think with this, my favourite thing about it so far is Lisbeth Salander, who is the main character, and I just think she's very kick-ass, and I think she's amazing. I cannot wait to read more about her. And it obviously took me ages to read this second one, but to be honest with you, I really, really want to read the third one now. I don't know if I'll read it immediately, but I would definitely like to read it fairly soon because it's a brilliant book so far. Then the third book is one I'm planning on reading fairly soon. This is a 650 page book, and to be honest, I seem to be reading a lot of big books this year, so I'm going to continue with the same thread. But this is The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton, which it says it's the winner of Richard and Judy's Summer Read 2007. I have no idea what that means. Richard and Judy, I think, do like a book club thing, I'm not entirely sure. But this is a historical fiction book, and you'll know probably if you've watched my channel before that I really enjoy historical fiction books. I have a thing about long ones as well, because I have a thing about long historical fiction books because I think that they're often more well researched and there's lots more kind of facts and things in them, which I always find really interesting. This follows three different time periods. You have 1913, when Nell is a young girl and she is kind of the eve of the First World War. Then you have 1975, when Nell is an old lady, and then you have 2005, when she's passed away and she has left her granddaughter this house, or this cottage, in her will, and I guess the cottage is kind of the Forgotten Garden. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's got something to do with that. I'm really excited about this book. I think that it will be a really interesting read. Very rarely do I read much about the First World War. I often read more about the Second World War, so I feel like this could be interesting. And yeah, I'm really interested to read this, so it will be very much reviewed soon, so look forward to that. Next up is a YA book that everybody is talking about, and I still haven't read it, but I do have it now, so hopefully I'll read it soon. And that is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which is inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement in America, I believe, and it follows a woman, or a young girl named Star, who lives two different lives basically. She has the life she lives at school, where she goes to a very privileged school in a very kind of posh area, and then where she lives in a very poor neighbourhood. And one day she's driving with her best friend Khalil is driving her, and they get pulled over by the police, and he is shot dead by the police. And as a witness to that, she could do many things, and it's a case of kind of how she deals with what she's seen and how she then kind of moves forward with that. It's obviously got a lot to do with police brutality and like I said, Black Lives Matter, and a lot of kind of really important issues, especially nowadays. I follow Angie Thomas on Twitter, and she's such an eloquent lady, and I just think that she really cares and it's really important to her, and for that I just think this is such an important book, and I cannot wait to read this because I've heard so many good things about it. Next up, I have an old favourite, and this is, I'm trying to read a lot more of the books I read as a child and kind of reading them as an adult and seeing what I think. Now, I've had a few flops because of this. There's a few books that I've read now which I've hated even though I loved them as a kid. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to hate this one. This is James and the Giant Peach by Roald Dahl. Now, you can't go wrong with a Roald Dahl book in my opinion. I adore Roald Dahl's writing. I've read Matilda about 900 times. I've read George's Marvellous Medicine. I love the BFG. So I really wanted to read one that I hadn't read in a while, and James and the Giant Peach is one I don't really think I read that many times as a kid. Like, I sort of remember it, obviously. It's like an iconic story, but I don't really remember reading it very regularly. So it's definitely one of those books that I really want to read, and I love this kind of like this. They've done like a set of these books, I think. Penguin has, and I just really like it, so I'm looking forward to reading this one. Next up is another one that I read as a child, but slightly older child, and this is a little bit less kind of kid friendly, I'm gonna say. I don't quite know how to word that, but it is Forever by Judy Blume. Last year I read Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume, which I also read as a child and loved. This was Judy Blume's kind of more YA as opposed to middle grade. This follows, I'm trying to remember their names, Michael and Catherine, and Catherine is a virgin, and this is her first relationship, and it's about, does she want to have sex, basically. It's kind of that, like, I'm a virgin, what do I do? Like, I don't know whether to have sex or not. It's kind of her kind of dilemma, I guess, over what she should do, whether she should or shouldn't. And I loved this as a kid, and it's one of those books that I remember really stuck with me at that time, because I think I read this when I was about like 13 or something, and I think in this she's, oh, I'm not sure how old she is. I feel like I'd know how old she was if I knew the American school system. This says when we were in 9th grade, which I have no idea what 9th grade is. I'm gonna say they're like 15 or something, 16 maybe. I'd like to think they're legal. Who knows? Yeah, I really want to read this again. This is on the back, the classic novel of first love, first sex and first heartbreak, and that is basically sums this up perfectly. So definitely one I'm going to get to quite soon. It's also really short. I think it's 200 pages long. Where are we at? Oh, there's a lot of things in here, hang on. Oh no, it's not even 200, it's like 175, so this will take me no time at all to read, and yeah, I just can't wait for it. Next up, I have Body of Evidence by Patricia Cornwell, which I've definitely read before, and I'm sure I even used to own it, but I can't find it now. But basically, if you don't know, or you haven't watched a lot of my videos before, you might not know, I adore Patricia Cornwell's writing. I've read a lot of her Kay Scarpetta novels, but I've never read them all in order, and this is the second book. I read the first book, I want to say it was like towards the end of the year last year, and I was like, I really want to just continue reading the series but from the beginning. And I know I've got a lot of the books here, but a lot of them are kind of like book number 5 or whatever, so hopefully I've got some of the next ones in the series coming, but I know there's about 20 odd books in the series. But I really want to reread the second one, because like I said, I'm trying to read them in order so I can kind of get the backstory a little bit more as well, because I think when you read them out of order, although the cases are very different, like the backstory and the relationships between the characters are a little bit different, but I still just love this. Again, I don't really want to read the back because I like to go into these books without really knowing too much. But I love her writing and I love the kind of series in general, so I can't wait to read this one. The next book I have is a romance that's apparently hot and steamy, I don't know, but I'm not sure where I got this from. I think I remember seeing somebody talking about this, but this is Going Too Far by Jennifer Eccles. I've heard of Jennifer Eccles before, but I don't know too much about it. I'm just going to quickly read the synopsis because I don't know how to explain this otherwise. But it basically says, high school senior Meg revels in being a rebel, cutting class whenever possible and hanging out anywhere she's not supposed to. But when she and her friends are busted for trespassing and underage drinking, she's sentenced to spend her school break riding along with a rookie police officer, John After, on his night shift patrol. He's only 2 years older than Meg, but John makes it clear that he considers this a babysitting job he'd rather not have to undertake. And that's fine, because Meg can't stand him either. His straight-laced, by-the-book attitude is everything that she hates. But they're about to discover that they have a lot more in common than either one of them could have dreamed, and as they're forced to spend time together, sparks fly and a hot attraction between them becomes undeniable. I feel like this is going to be your classic love-hate relationship, and like enemies to friends, that kind of thing. I'm interested. I don't know how I feel about this yet. Again, this is like a 250-page book, so and not one that's going to take me a long time to read. And it's kind of interesting to read books that you wouldn't normally read, I suppose, so we'll see how I feel about this one. Then I have another classic YA book that I haven't read yet. Now, I have read one Sarah J Maas book, I think. I think I read... what have I read? Oh, I read Assassin's Blade? Is that what it's called? The like novella one that goes with the Throne of Glass series. I own the first 3 books in the Throne of Glass series and haven't read them yet. But I've heard better things about her other series, so I've got the first book. This is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, which I believe is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I've heard the second one in the series is better than the first, but I've also heard the first one is pretty good too. So I'm interested. Like I said, I've read Assassin's Blade and I loved it. Is it called Assassin's Blade? I have no idea if that's what it's called. I hope so, otherwise I'm making myself look like an idiot. I loved that book. It was really, really well written, I thought, so hopefully I really like her writing style. I haven't heard very negative things about this. There's a couple of things, but I think mostly it's that people don't like Sarah J Maas. Is that true? Should I say that out loud? Anyway, again, I am very excited. I don't know too much about this, and I kind of, apart from that it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I kind of don't want to know too much about it. I think it's got fairies in it, but other than that, I have no idea, so I can't wait to read this and finally be able to say I've read like one of Sarah J Maas's series. Like, hopefully I'll finish it if I enjoy it that much. The next book I have is Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. I've heard amazing things about David Levithan's writing, but I've never actually read any. And I'm going through John Green's books at the minute and reading all of them, and this is obviously the next one I have on my list. John Green is either a love or a hate for me, so I'm interested to find out what I think about this. He also seems to have a thing about names. I read An Abundance of Catherine's, was it in January? I can't remember, but I did not like it at all. But that was about a guy who only ever went out with girls called Catherine. This one is about 2 boys called Will Grayson who meet each other and figure out that they have the same name. Apparently this has musical stuff in, so that's always interesting. Although looking through this, there's parts of this that are written in like, is it like text form or something? So I feel like that could be quite interesting. I hope I like this more than Abundance of Catherine's, because I really didn't like that one. And this says at the bottom, funny, rude and original, and I do have quite a rude sense of humour at times, so hopefully this will really appeal to me. We'll see, won't we? So yeah, fingers crossed I love this and don't hate it. And then the last book on my list is actually the first graphic novel I think I'm ever going to read. I've actually owned one. I have, what is it called? That was my books falling on the floor. I have The Wicked and the Divine on my shelves, but I haven't actually read it yet. But this is a graphic novel. This is V for Vendetta. It's got adult stamped across the top, which is quite funny. This is V for Vendetta, which I've seen the film of V for Vendetta, but I read some reviews of this and apparently it's completely different. It's kind of like a totalitarian world. It sort of reminds me a little bit of 1984, not that I've read it, but it kind of gives off the same vibes as that synopsis does. Again, like I said, I've never read a graphic novel before, so I'm quite interested and quite excited to do so, and finally be able to say I've read one, because it's getting a bit silly now. Yeah, excited, and I think I'll either love it or hate it, and then I'll know whether I'm a graphic novel person or not, so we shall see. So that is my library haul. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, guys. Let me know if you have. Let me know if there's any you think I should read before others, because I mean I want to read all of them, so I'll read them in whatever order. that you think. So let me know in the comments below what you think, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye guys.